Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kerry Grady Vincent, and I'm the Senior Manager of Clinical and Educational Programs at Osteoporosis Canada. I will be your moderator for today's webinar, The Role of Nutrient-Dense Food in Health, featuring registered dietitian Laurie Jackman. Today's webinar is in partnership with ThinkBeef. Before we begin, Osteoporosis Canada acknowledges the land that our offices, located in Toronto, are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. Osteoporosis Canada is the only national organization serving people affected by osteoporosis, working to educate, empower, and support individuals and communities on bone and muscle health and in the risk reduction and treatment of osteoporosis. Our Scientific Advisory Council is made up of experts from across the country in osteoporosis and bone metabolism and is a volunteer membership. Comprised of clinicians, researchers, and educators, the SAC advises our board and staff on scientific and medical issues. OC provides medically accurate information to patients, healthcare providers, and the public. Our services include programs and support groups, educational webinars, podcasts, digital tools, and resources available at osteoporosis.ca. We are excited about today's presentation, which will explore nutrient-dense foods. What are they? Why do they matter? And how do our nutrient needs change through our lifespan? There are many things to consider when planning and preparing your meals. This presentation is not intended as individualized health advice. If you have questions during the webinar, remember to click the question and answer button on your screen to submit your questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can, time permitting. Before we begin, make sure you have your speakers turned up fully so that you can hear the presentation clearly. Without further ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce our speaker, registered dietitian Laurie Jackman. Laurie is a registered dietitian based in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with more than 25 years of experience helping people improve their health through practical, approachable nutrition. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Dalhousie University and a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition from St. Francis Xavier University. A passionate communicator, Laurie has been a regular dietitian expert on CTV Your Morning Atlantic since 2001, using evidence-based nutrition messaging to share recipes and simple, accessible strategies that help viewers make confident food choices and achieve their best health. Please join me in welcoming Laurie.
Hello, so great to be here. Can you still see my screen, Kerry?
Yes.
Perfect.
No, I see you. I don't see your slides yet.
Oh, you don't see my slides yet. Okay,
Nope.
Let me just make sure. It's wonderful to be here, everyone, and thank you for that warm introduction, Kerry. I really appreciate it. I am now going to share my screen. So bear with me. And you tell me when you see my screen.
Perfect.
Good. Okay, lovely. So yes, thank you so much for the introduction. And it is wonderful to be here today with you all to talk about the role of nutrient-dense food in health. So as Kerry said, we are going to understand nutrient density today. What exactly does that mean and why it matters? We're going to unpack a variety of nutrient-dense eating patterns. We're going to look at nutrient needs across the lifespan, focusing on teens, adults, and older adults specifically. We're also going to cover how to identify non-nutrient dense foods. And then we're going to explore a case study, really translating all of the concepts that we learned into food choices. Okay, so let's start off with understanding nutrient density. What is a nutrient-dense foods? Well, they're foods that are high in nutrients, but relatively low in calories. They contain vitamins, minerals, complex carbohydrates, lean protein, healthy fats, and we know that they're low in saturated fat, sugars, and sodium. Calorie for calorie, nutrient-dense foods fuel your body with more of what it needs for good health and less of what it doesn't. Great examples of nutrient-dense foods include vegetables and fruit, whole grains, low-fat milk products, seafood, lean meats, eggs, peas, beans, and nuts. Let's now
Okay.
talk about,
Oh, Laurie,
sorry,
can I just interrupt for a second? Are
of
you able to?
course,
Sure. Sorry. Can you hide your Zoom message on your screen?
I am so sorry.
That's okay.
I'm working from two screens today, everyone, so just bear with me.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, no, no. I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for that reminder. Okay, good now? Yes. All
Perfect.
right. Let's talk about why nutrient density matters and why we're talking about that today. So, we know that nutrient dense foods really support chronic disease prevention. So, approximately 44% of adults in Canada have at least one chronic disease, with diet being a leading risk factor here. We also know that it supports healthy growth and development. Getting the nutrients we need across our lifespan will support, of course, growth and development, from bones and muscles to cognitive development as well. We also know adequate nutrients are essential for energy production and energy levels. And of course, satiety and weight management. Making sure when we're getting foods that are lower in calories but higher in nutrients, they're going to help us maintain a healthy weight without feeling deprived because they fill us up for longer. So let's translate this a little bit into eating patterns. We know making healthy food choices can help us develop a healthy eating pattern. And healthy eating patterns help us improve our overall health. And when I refer to a healthy eating pattern, it really means what we eat and drink on a regular basis. We know all of those foods and drinks work together to help us feel good, maintain and improve our physical and mental health, and meet our nutritional needs. Now I want to review a few nutrient-dense eating patterns that we know are evidence-based and evidence-informed. The first one being one that we know very well as dietitians across Canada is Canada's Food Guide. This was released by Health Canada in 2019, and it provides evidence-based dietary recommendations to help us meet our nutrient needs and lower our risk of chronic disease. It uses that healthy plate method, or proportions of food, as a tool to help us make healthy meals or snacks. As seen in the picture that you see there on your slide, we want to try to make half of our plates vegetables and fruit. A quarter, we want to fill that with protein foods. That includes animal proteins, plant-based proteins, your milk, your yogurt, your cheese would be there as well. And then the other quarter of your plate, we want to fill with whole grains. We should make water our drink of choice. And we know that this healthy food guide goes on to talk about healthy eating habits like being mindful, cooking at home more often, eating meals with others, and using food labels to make informed choices. So healthy eating goes beyond just about the foods that we eat. It's really about all of these other factors as well. There's an online suite of resources for this food guide, videos, recipes, and tips. Another well-researched eating pattern is the Mediterranean diet. This is thoroughly researched, well-supported eating plan for heart health. The foundation of this plan includes eating vegetables, fruit, grains, beans, nuts, seeds, fish, and olive oil, while reducing our intakes of meats and sweets. It focuses on traditional foods and cooking styles of countries along the Mediterranean. And what research shows is that people who follow a Mediterranean diet have a reduced risk of heart disease and lower levels of LDL, or that bad cholesterol. It also recommends a reduction in ultra-processed foods, making foods at home with minimally processed ingredients. It really focuses on mindful eating as well. Okay, another nutrient-dense eating pattern that I want to share with you is the DASH diet. DASH stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. So, in other words, an eating plan to lower your blood pressure. It involves eating a diet rich in vegetables, fruit, low-fat dairy, fish, poultry, and beans. It works by controlling our intake of salt, increasing our consumption of fiber, calcium, and potassium. In research, the DASH diet helps reduce blood pressure. A lot of the times we're seeing within 2 weeks of starting. The DASH diet is a little bit different because it specifies the number of servings for each food group. So for example, vegetables and fruit, we would recommend 4 to 5 servings of each of those daily. When we talk about low-fat dairy, we would look at 2 to 3 servings daily. Nuts, seeds, dried beans, 4 to 5 servings per week. So a little bit more specific recommendations of the foods to eat and include. Another dietary pattern that I want to review is the MIND diet. The MIND diet is really a hybrid of the Mediterranean and DASH diets. It's an eating plan proven to reduce our risk of Alzheimer's and cognitive decline, and also protect our heart. MIND stands for Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. In other words, foods that's good for your brain. It emphasizes foods specifically linked to brain health, like leafy greens, berries, and nuts. You can see it includes these 10 essential components and has recommendations for daily consumption and weekly consumption. So, these are just some of the evidence-informed, evidence-based, nutrient-dense eating plans that we know and we recommend as dietitians. What do they have in common? Well, I can tell you, vegetables and fruit form the foundation of a lot of these plans. You'll see whole grains as well emphasized. Beans, lentils, nuts, and seeds are also emphasized. Low-fat milk products, healthy fats, including omega-3, and lean meat, fish, and poultry are also emphasized. What we know, things that we want to consume less often, are non-nutrient dense foods, like foods that are higher in fat, sugar, and sodium. So that being said, and that's a little bit of background to kind of keep us going with our presentation today, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about nutrient needs across the lifespan. And specifically, I want to focus on adolescents, adults, and older adults. So we'll start with adolescents. This is defined as that age between 14 and 18 years. And this is known as a rapid growth phase. There's a major hormonal changes and increased nutrient requirements in this stage. It's an extremely important time. We know those parents out there, we know it's such an important time for laying that foundation of lifelong good eating habits. We always want to emphasize balanced meals and snacks that include a variety of nutrients. It's a real crucial time as well to build maximum bone mass through nutrient-rich foods and physical activity. Iron is especially important for girls, especially who have increased needs due to menstruation. Progressing, I want to talk about adults. So this is defined as the age between 19 and 50 years. During this time, nutritional needs stabilize, but really remain crucial for preventing chronic disease, maintaining our health, and supporting our well-being. In this stage, we want to focus on, again, a balanced diet, a balanced nutrient-dense eating plan, whatever that is. Prioritize our vegetables and fruits, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. We know at this time, peak bone mass has been achieved. So now we want to focus on, after that, maintaining our bone health by making sure we're consuming adequate nutrients to support that. Really important. And we'll talk about that as we progress through here as well, what that exactly means. Okay, and now for older adults. This is defined as 51 years plus. So we know nutrient-dense foods become even more important at this time because we become less efficient at absorbing nutrients. Older adults can experience many physiological changes that can impact eating and nutritional habits. Some may experience altered sense of taste. So some adults may skipped foods that they previously enjoyed, or may add more salt or sugar to foods to add flavor. There may be dental issues or dry mouth that can affect how much and what people eat. Gastrointestinal changes. GI functions often slow as we age, which can cause delayed stomach emptying, decreased appetite, and again, decreased nutrient absorption. At this stage, bone and muscle mass loss accelerates, so we need to focus on ways to preserve these. We can do this through nutrient-dense foods that we choose, along with prioritizing muscle strengthening exercises, which of course can support our strength and reduce our risk of falls. It's important to note at this stage that iron requirements drop for women after menopause. So, in saying all of that, what are the key trends that we notice? Well, this is a chart that shows the dietary reference intakes for men and women respectively. So, at a glance, we can see calcium needs are higher in adolescence when we're building bone. They also increase for women over the age of 50 because of that sharp drop in estrogen during menopause that accelerates bone loss. For vitamin D, it looks like the recommendation stays consistent, but it's important to note that Health Canada recommends that people over the age of 50 take a daily vitamin D supplement of 400 international units a day. Also to note that's not on the chart, men and women over 70 years, their vitamin D needs increase to 800 international units. And we'll talk about that as we go on in the presentation as well. But basically our skin's ability to synthesize vitamin D from sunlight, it falls off as we get older. Protein is shown by grams per kilogram of body weight a day. We know needs are higher in adolescence to support that rapid growth phase and significant muscle development and hormone changes. Magnesium needs increase slightly for men and women 51 plus due to mainly absorption issues. And vitamin K increases after the age of 18, specifically to maintain bone mineral density and to ensure cardiovascular health. Some other trends we know, and I've mentioned this, calorie needs tend to decrease as we age due to metabolism changes and reduced muscle mass, and sometimes lower physical activity levels, whereas micronutrient needs often increase. So again, really supporting that need for nutrient-dense foods throughout the lifespan. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of calcium and vitamin D in early life for growth and later in life for maintaining bone density. And of course, as protein, when we talk about that, that seems to be the macronutrient of the moment right now. Definitely higher needs if we talk about that adolescence phase, but it's something that we cannot forget about as we get older. And we'll talk about its importance as well. All right, I'm going to ask you a quick question now. Now, Kerry, I can't see the chat, so hopefully you can maybe tell me what people are saying in the chat. Sure. So I want to switch. Sorry. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
Thank you, Kerry. Okay, so I specifically want to talk about bone health across the lifespan. So in the chat, I would love for you to enter the age that you think we begin to lose bone. What do you think?
We're seeing quite a range. Wow. Lots of answers. I would say some people are saying 30, 35. We have someone saying 22. We've got someone saying 70. After 50. I would say the most common answer is 30.
Okay, good. So, those of you that said their mid-30s, men and women alike begin to lose bone in their mid-30s. So this is really important. Is it over after that? No, there's things that we can do. So let's talk about bone health. So attaining bone mass in early life is critical when our bones are still growing. But even after that peak bone mass is reached at the mid-30 point, what can we do to reduce our risk of developing osteoporosis later in life? Well, it really starts out making sure we're getting balanced nutrition. So balanced nutrition can help us maintain what we have and minimize bone loss. And there's 5 key nutrients for bone health. The first off being calcium. I know we've all heard of that. It's one of the building blocks for our bones. It helps to build and maintain bone strength. Vitamin D helps our body absorb calcium and incorporate calcium into the bone to help keep our bones strong. Really important to note as well, vitamin D also improves muscle function, which can help improve balance and prevent falls and fractures. Protein as well. Bone is made up of calcium, other minerals, and protein. It's a nutrient that's necessary for building and repairing body tissues, including bones. Protein really forms that structure in our bones that holds calcium, and it's really important for keeping our muscles strong. Strong muscles help our balance and prevent falls. When I talk about magnesium, another extremely important nutrient for bone health, more than half of the magnesium found in our body is in our bones. And getting enough in our diet is really important for supporting bone health. And vitamin K, another extremely important nutrient. It activates a protein that helps build bone and bind minerals such as calcium to the bone structure. This is all great. Love talking about nutrients, but let's translate it into food. So, when we translate this into the foods that we eat, we can see here foods that are rich in calcium include our milk, our yogurt, our cheese. Those are well known to be great calcium sources. Also, things like bok choy can deliver calcium, almonds. There is an extensive list on Osteoporosis Canada website on all foods that are going to give you rich sources of calcium. For vitamin D, and we're going to talk about this more as the presentation goes on, not found in a lot of foods, to be honest. So milk is fortified with vitamin D. Some yogurts, fatty fish is where you're going to get vitamin D. Protein, so that picture on your bottom left, protein's a group, it includes so many different foods, from animal protein like beef, pork, poultry, and fish, to alternatives such as beans, lentils, tofu. You have eggs in here, nut butters, nuts and seeds. Milk products are also considered good sources of protein. The magnesium-rich foods are pictured in the middle there. So they're found in many food sources, particularly in plant-based food sources. And vitamin K on your right, vitamin K is widely available in both plant and animal foods. And you can get enough vitamin K by just having one serving of leafy green vegetables a day. Okay, so that's bone health across the lifespan. Let's switch to muscle health across the lifespan. So again, Kerry, I'm going to ask for your assistance if you don't mind. In the chat, I would love for you to enter the age at which you think we begin to lose muscle. You can tell me what you see there.
I am seeing 30, 40, 45, 18. I would say 30 to 40 seems to be the most common range.
Okay, excellent. So we got a great group here. So we start to lose muscle mass, yes, after the age of 30, losing approximately 3 to 8% per decade, and then more rapidly after age 60. Okay, so what does that mean for us? Well, let's talk about this. Muscle, of course, extremely important. It affects every system in the body. It plays a role in movement, balance, posture, and strength. The average person's healthy body weight is made up of about 40% muscle. So, how do we support muscle mass? Through nutrition, making sure we get adequate protein at meals. Extremely important, and we'll talk more about this. Being sure to avoid low-calorie diets, because this is really associated with a loss of muscle. Adequate vitamin D, as I mentioned, is really important because it can improve muscle strength and performance and can decrease the risk of falls. We can also maintain muscle health by resistance training. Resistance training can maintain muscle mass. What we would say is aim for a routine of 2 to 3 times per week that's progressive, targets major muscle groups, and uses things like free weights, resistance bands, machines, and body weights. Okay, as always, I love to translate all the nutrients into food. So protein is such a wonderful group. As I said, it's the macronutrient of the moment. So what I want to say here first before I talk about foods it's highly recommended that you really balance your protein intake throughout the day. So what we talk about is trying to get anywhere between 25 grams to 35 grams of protein per meal, because this better preserves lean body mass. What we see as dietitians when people come to us is people consuming on average 10 grams of protein in the morning, 15 grams at noon, and maybe 65 grams at dinner. Not as recommended when we talk about ways that we want to preserve lean body mass. Try to spread that evenly out through the day. So there's lots of ways to get protein. We can look at our chicken, our beef, turkey, pork, fish. On average, an ounce is going to give you 7 grams of protein. If we look at beans, peas, and lentils, about 3/4 of a cup cooked will give you about 12 grams of protein. Our milk, 8.5 grams per cup. Our Greek yogurt, around 16 grams for 3/4 of a cup. Cottage cheese comes in around 15 grams at about half a cup. You've got 2 medium eggs, 12 grams for 2 mediums. Hemp seeds, 13 grams for 1/4 of a cup. Almonds, peanuts, 8 grams for 1/4 cup. I could go on, the list goes on. Again, Osteoporosis Canada, if you want to really check out foods that are rich in protein, lots of different options here for you. And again, making sure we can balance this out throughout the day. So let's combine these two things together. How do we optimize both bone and muscle health? So as we've seen, the loss of muscle and bone are common with aging. And actually, to maintain the health of both, the guidelines are actually very similar. First off, let's make sure we're getting regular exercise. We all should be aware of Canada's 24-hour movement guidelines, but more importantly for our topic today, to emphasize that resistance training. So just as I just mentioned, aim for that routine of 2 to 3 times per week that's progressive and targets major muscle groups. We also want to talk about nutrition. So guidelines to maintain both bone and muscle strength are similar, concentrating again on those 5 key nutrients to support health. Osteoporosis Canada has a really great online resource. It's called a nutrient calculator, and I'm going to go over that with you today in our case study, and that can really ensure that these nutritional targets are being met. It's really important to point out here as well, trying to avoid those low-calorie diets because they're really associated with a loss of muscle mass. So again, just really important to talk about that. At this time, I also want to address a common myth. I hear this a lot as a dietitian, and it's that higher protein eating patterns cause bone loss. What I can tell you is protein is important for bone health. Many people worry that eating protein can weaken bones by causing calcium to be lost, and that is a myth. Research now shows that protein is important for bone health, especially when you get enough calcium and vitamin D. Protein is a part of that bone structure, and it helps to maintain muscle strength. And again, as I said, strong muscles improve balance and reduce our risk of falls. So making sure that we are getting enough protein. Protein really helps our body absorb more calcium from food. It's extremely important when we talk about that recipe for bone health. So hopefully that dispels that myth. And I think at this point I would plug making sure that you get your advice from credible sources. And of course, registered dietitians, we're all liable for our information that we give. So I would always recommend getting your nutrition advice from a registered dietitian. Okay, let's now talk about how to identify non-nutrient dense foods. So what tools are out there to help us do this? So first off, non-nutrient dense foods are defined as foods that supply energy, but they may be high in calories and relatively low in essential nutrients. Health Canada's front of package symbols can really help us identify foods that are higher in things like sugar, sodium, and saturated fat. This labeling tool has become mandatory as of January of this year. And it really helps you when you're out and about in a grocery store buying food, make quick and informed choices. So why has Health Canada done this? Well, we know the reason that this labeling tool has been implemented is that regular intake of foods that are higher in sodium, sugars, or saturated fat can lead to increased health risks. Some of those risks being stroke, obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and some types of cancer. So we always want to talk about knowledge is power. And this is just another tool in your toolbox that can help you make an informed choice. In terms of what these symbols look like, and I'm sure you've seen these on packaged foods in your grocery store, this is what they look like. They're always similar. They're a black and white symbol. They have a magnifying glass, and they highlight what that food is high in, whether it's sodium, sugar, or saturated fat, or any combination of these nutrients. So, as always, I like to translate this into food. What are some simple swaps that we can make to increase nutrient density? Well, if we were choosing white pasta or white bread, really opting for the whole grain counterpart. And we know the best way to know if something is whole grain is to look at that list of ingredients and make sure whole grain is the first grain that we see. If we're choosing white rice, maybe swapping that to a brown rice, quinoa, or barley. Swapping deli meats for things like leftover chicken, beef, beans, fish, canned fish would all be great choices and nutrient-dense choices. Swapping sour cream for plain Greek yogurt, pretzels for popcorn, juice for whole fruit, and granola bars for nuts, fruit, or yogurt. We could go on with this list. There's so many different swaps that you can make to increase nutrient density, but hopefully this is giving you a bit of inspiration. Okay, now I want to go into the case study that I promised that we would cover. So, in our case study today, this is going to be Ella. Meet Ella. She is a 52-year-old woman. She's concerned about bone loss and weight. She feels tired and wants to improve energy. She often skips breakfast, and she wants tips for feeding a family. So, what can we tell Ella? Let's see. First, what's a typical day of eating for her? So, for breakfast, well, she usually skips it and she drinks coffee. For lunch, she's consuming a bagel with butter and has another cup of coffee. She snacks on crackers, cheese, and water. And for dinner, she's cooking for her family. So she's making pasta with tomato sauce. She has some garlic bread and a side salad. Okay, so if we do a quick glance for nutrient gaps, well, right off the bat, I don't see any dairy, fortified foods, leafy greens, so we're probably low in calcium. Bone health is a concern for Ella, so I would definitely be looking for that. I don't see things like fatty fish or fortified foods again that are going to give us that source of vitamin D, so that would be low. If we look at protein, I would look for protein at each meal and snack, and I don't see that, so that would also be low. And fiber, mostly Ella is consuming refined carbohydrates, so not nutrient-dense choices, few vegetables, no fruit, no legumes, no whole grains. So I would say that would be low as well. So that's just me doing this job for a long time. But you know what? Let's put it through Osteoporosis Canada Nutrient Calculator. It is going to check for those 5 key nutrients that we know are so important for bone health. And we know bone health is a concern for Ella. So calcium, vitamin D, protein, magnesium, and vitamin K. Also important to note, Ella's over the age of 50. We know we begin to lose muscle. We've learned that after the age of 30. So these are also another great rationale to check these key nutrients. When I run her typical day of eating through the nutrient calculator, this is what we get. For calcium, because Ella's age, she would need 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day, and she is not meeting that requirement at 358 milligrams a day with her current eating pattern. So we know bones are a calcium reservoir. So if we don't provide our bodies with enough calcium on a daily basis, it's going to be taken from our bones. And this is going to result, of course, in fragile bones and increased risk of fracture. If I look at vitamin D, so Ella needs 15 micrograms a day or 600 international units. She's only getting 0.06 micrograms a day. Even if Ella took a supplement of 400 international units a day, she's falling short. So vitamin D, we know, again, it helps our body absorb calcium, increases that mineralization of calcium into the bone, and it also supports our muscle function. Vitamin D is tough to get through foods, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this as we keep going on here. A quick check for protein. So when you use the calculator, if you remember on our key trends chart, protein is calculated per grams of kilogram of body weight a day. So we do need to know weight. So we're going to assume Ella's weight is around 150 pounds. So that means with that calculation, she would need about 54 grams of protein a day. Again, no surprise, she's falling short with this macronutrient. And protein is so important for muscle and bone strength. For magnesium, for Ella's age, she requires 320 milligrams of magnesium. But again, just due to decreased overall calorie intake, lack of variety of foods, she's not meeting this nutrient. And if I look at vitamin K, finally, she's not meeting this nutrient either. Again, lack of overall calorie intake, lack of variety of foods again. Vitamin K is very quite simple to meet through foods, so we know there's some easy things that we can do. So what would we recommend for Ella? I'm going to show you some quick and easy nutrient wins and show you the big difference that these make. First off, we would sit down with Ella and figure out why she's not eating breakfast. And it's okay if she doesn't want to eat first thing in the morning, but can we have something within a couple of hours? And if she was agreeable, we would look at making sure we're going to get some protein, some good healthy fat, and some fiber at this first meal. So let's recommend some Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt, usually 2 to 3 times the amount of protein as a regular yogurt, so a great nutrient-dense food. Combine it with some berries, fiber, and of course nutrients, and maybe a high fiber cereal, excuse me, and some nuts. For lunch, she can have her bagel, but let's switch it to a whole grain bagel or a wrap, making sure we're adding some protein here, adding some vegetables like spinach, tomato, or cucumber. And again, she can have her coffee, but maybe you switch it to a latte where we're getting a little bit more milk in there that's going to give us some extra protein and extra calcium. For her snack, again, we can keep it with our crackers and cheese, but maybe we switch to whole grain crackers and add a piece of fruit. And to our dinner, again, this is a family favorite, so we'll keep it at that. But again, let's add some protein. Let's add some meatballs and keep her side salad and maybe switch to a whole grain pasta. Okay. Now, do the same thing. Let's put this through Osteoporosis Canada nutrient calculator, check these 5 key nutrients for bone and muscle health, and let's see what we get now. When we look at calcium, look at that. We meet calcium requirements just by simply adding a few foods that you saw. Greek yogurt, the latte, keeping the cheese, very easy to meet her calcium requirements. When we switch to vitamin D, so she's still not meeting her vitamin D needs with food alone. However, if she adds a supplement of 400 international units a day, she will meet her requirement. So 400 international units would add and bring her up over that 15 micrograms a day mark, which is great and important, and she should be taking that supplement. For protein, she is easily meeting her protein requirement now. So again, it reiterates the point, having protein at every meal. We've had the Greek yogurt at breakfast. We had tuna and latte to her lunch, meatballs to her dinner, keeping cheese as her snack, and look at that. So simple. For magnesium, just by adding greens to lunch and dinner and whole grain wraps to lunch and pasta to dinner, we can easily meet magnesium requirements through food without using supplements for sure. And if I look at vitamin K, again, just by adding vegetables to lunch and dinner, we can easily meet these requirements as well. So you can see this calculator is such a great tool to give us a quick check on if we're meeting our nutrient requirements. Okay, I promised I would talk a little bit about vitamin D, so I do want to do that. Vitamin D is known as the sunshine vitamin because our skin can make it when it is exposed to the sun. But unfortunately, when we live in Canada between October and March, it's very hard to make vitamin D because of the angle of that sun. And as we age, our skin's ability to produce vitamin D decreases as we age. Vitamin D, as I mentioned, so important to help our body absorb calcium and keep our bones strong, and also improves muscle function, which can help with balance and prevent falls. The best way to get vitamin D is through both food and supplements. Unfortunately, about 1 in 5 people living in Canada are not getting enough vitamin D. So, why? Vitamin D is not found in a lot of foods. The only natural sources of vitamin D in the Canadian food supply are fatty fish and egg yolks. And then there are foods that are fortified with vitamin D. So the great news is Health Canada has come up with a fortification strategy, and it's designed to increase or allow vitamin D in certain foods. So vitamin D has actually doubled in milk and in margarine. So milk went from 100 international units per cup to 200. Margarine from 50 to 100 international units for 2 teaspoons. These mandatory increases had to be done by December 31st of last year. So you're going to see those on food labels if you have a look now. Then there's voluntary fortification. So plant-based beverages, if they are fortified, they are permitted to match the cow's milk level of 200 international units per cup. Goat's milk and yogurt, kefir, they're also allowed to be updated, enabling, again, that 200 international units per cup or 475 grams of yogurt. Excuse me. Okay. As always, I love to translate this into food. So what does this mean? So remember, when we looked at the DRIs, so the dietary reference intakes, if we talk about adults, we need around 600 international units from food and supplements. So if I look at fatty fish, 125 gram portion, sorry, I'm switching between international units and micrograms, 340 international units or 8.5 micrograms. So we need 600 international units or 15 micrograms a day. Our canned tuna, so this is about 1/4 of a cup, gives us about 26 international units or 0.66 micrograms. Our egg yolk, 32 international units or 0.8 micrograms. There's our cup of milk and our margarine, as I talked about. So again, we really have to be intentional when we're looking at food sources of vitamin D and then making sure if we're over the age of 50, we are taking that daily supplement. Okay. A little bit of a note on menopause here. I'm giving lots of information here today. So remember, Ella was over the age of 50. So I do want to talk about this too. So estrogen is really essential for bone health because bone cells have estrogen receptors. Bone is constantly being renewed in a process called remodeling. So old bone is broken down and then new bone is being built up. Estrogen plays a role in keeping this process in balance. When estrogen levels drop at menopause, bone breakdown speeds up, and then bone building is not able to keep up, leading to bone loss. So bone loss from menopause cannot be fully reversed, but it can be managed. So what do we do? So if we were talking about Ella, we would make sure that we are managing her bone loss through regular physical activity. If she was a smoker, we would look at ways to help support her in quitting smoking, limiting alcohol and caffeine, and ensuring she's getting enough of those 5 key nutrients to protect her bones: calcium, protein, vitamin K, vitamin D, and magnesium. Okay. The last thing that Ella wanted to talk about, if you remember our case study, is what about tips for feeding a family? So I do want to give a final note to this, tips for feeding a family, keeping nutrient density in mind. So I'm going to ask you again, I'm going to engage you through our chat, and Kerry, I'll get you to help me out here. As a dietitian, I ask all of my clients, what are your 5 go-to recipes? So you can enter, I want you just to think about this. So just think about it for a minute. If I were to come over to your house tonight, Kerry and I were to come over to your house for dinner, would you have a recipe that you felt confident and comfortable that you could pull together for us? So I want you to just enter in the chat. Yes, I have 5 recipes that I'm comfortable and confident to make, or maybe not. Maybe I don't. So, or even you could give a thumbs up if it's a yes. Maybe that might be easier for things and engagement. But really give this some thought. So this to me is the basis of meal planning. 5 recipes that you're comfortable and confident pulling together to feed yourself, feed your family. Do we have any engagement there, Kerry? Are we getting thumbs up or a yes
Yeah,
in the chat?
we're getting a lot of yeses.
Good.
I'm only seeing maybe 1 or 2 no's.
Okay. Okay. So this is always something I would get my clients to work on because this builds confidence in the kitchen, which is so huge. And it really does help with meal planning. So it gives us a place to really start. Strategies I'm going to tell you for success would be things like batch cooking. So making a large batch of a recipe and then putting the extra into individual portions to freeze over the next few months when we're pressed for time. Also, meal prepping. So this could be meal prepping your suppers, your lunches, breakfasts, a combination of those. It could also be meal prepping ingredients, pre-shredding cheese, getting your vegetables home when you get them and cutting them up and putting those in clear containers in plain sight in that fridge. It could be buying a huge thing of, let's say, beef or a roast and cooking the whole thing and maybe cutting it up and having it throughout the week. That could be meal prep is, I mean, I could do a whole hour on just meal prep. You could also be cook once, eat twice. Now, this is an awesome strategy and it's different from leftovers. So it's finding different and exciting ways to have that meal the next day or the next day. So for example, if we cooked chili tonight, maybe tomorrow night we have chili burritos, or maybe we have chili nachos, or we have chili on top of a sweet potato. So these are all strategies that I would tell my clients are going to set you up for success if I'm looking especially at making meals for a family or even 1 or 2, making sure that I'm getting the nutrients that I need, being intentional. I would say to everybody, your freezer can act like your second pantry. So it's really a secret weapon of family feeding. When you are in the kitchen, make the most of your time. So if I'm in the kitchen and I'm making rice or pasta, I'm going to double or triple that, and I'm going to put them in individual portions and freeze them for later meals when I can pull them out and make a meal. The same thing as I just mentioned with protein. If I'm cooking meat, chicken, ground meat, whatever it is, I'm going to cook more and freeze. So again, I can easily pull it out and make it a part of a meal. Even things like snacks, muffins, pancakes, waffles, make extra. You can even do full meals and freeze extra portions for later. Or meal add-ons like onions and peppers, chopped onions and peppers. Those are easily freezable as well. And I also want to talk about meal planning. So again, this could be a whole presentation, but I can tell you, there's one thing I'll tell you about meal planning is there's not one right way to do it. Everybody is different. Every family is different. Maybe people plan by the week. Maybe they plan a week of dinners and that works for them. Some people plan one day and they have leftovers and that really gives them ease for the week. Some people meal plan by planning themes. Maybe it's Mexican one night, Italian another night, and that works for them. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple. Maybe it's breakfast for dinner. What I would tell my clients, if you have a night where it's so busy, don't plan a meal where you've got 3 pots on the stove, right? That's just not going to make sense. You've got to look at your family. What makes sense for you? How much time do you have? And is it going to be breakfast for supper because we're running to basketball and soccer? Or are we going to sit down and have, a Newfoundland jigs dinner and, we've got time to enjoy that together? Okay. All right, my friends. Great timing. I always like to finish up any presentation I do with a little quiz. So you're welcome again to put your answers in the chat and we'll see what we can kind of come up with. So Kerry, I can't see it, so I'm going to enlist your help. So let's do question number 1. What's an example of a healthy eating pattern? This is what we talked about at the first of the presentation.
DASH diet, mind Mediterranean, lots of
Nice.
DASH, lots of Mediterranean.
Lovely. Yes. Canada's Food Guide. Healthy plate. You got it. Perfect. Number 2, what's the benefit of eating nutrient-dense foods?
Bone health,
Yeah.
bone density, useful calories, more energy,
Yes.
better health, maintaining weight, chronic disease prevention, satiety.
Lovely. Great. 100% there. All right. What are the key nutrients for bone and muscle strength? What are those key 5? Do you remember?
Somebody got them right away. Calcium, protein, vitamin K, magnesium, vitamin D.
So good.
Protein.
Lovely. And number 4, what's a tool to identify non-nutrient dense foods? What was that called?
The label. Food label.
Front of package. Sorry.
Front label.
Yes. Yep. Front of package labeling. You got it. And lastly, my friends, what's a strategy to feed a family well?
Planning meals, package labeling, batch cooking.
Yeah.
People were listening.
I
Please plan ahead.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. Okay. So listen, that was a pleasure to talk with you. I wish we were in person. It's always weird looking at a screen here, but yeah, you were all listening. That was awesome. So remember, food is more than fuel. It's the foundation of strength, mobility, and vitality across the lifespan. There's so much that food can do and how it can work for us. It's just getting a plan in place, and we're not meant to be perfect all the time. It's what we do most of the time that matters. So I'm happy to take your questions now. And yeah, I've left a little bit of time here, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thanks, Laurie. That was great. I think people got a lot of information to take away and think about. So let's go through a few questions. We have time for a couple. Could you share strategies or examples of nutrient-dense foods that are accessible and affordable for people with a limited income? That's a great question.
Oh, that's a great question, and so timely right now in our climate. So I would think of things like we talked about plant-based proteins like beans, lentils, chickpeas. They're nutrient dense, they're shelf stable, they're affordable. Dried but canned is also excellent for convenience. Eggs, affordable. Canned fish, we talked about, especially if we could get salmon, which would have a higher vitamin D content, and get it with the bones for extra calcium. We're increasing nutrient density there. Frozen fruits and vegetables are always my go-to, just as nutritious as fresh, and a great way to reduce food waste. I would rely on root vegetables. They're, again, usually always a great buy. Carrots, potatoes, turnip, inexpensive and super versatile. Things like oats, brown rice, barley, shelf stable, versatile, cost effective. And I would also look at cheaper cuts of meat. So sometimes we could buy a cheaper cut of meat that may be more tough, but the way that we cook it, if we were to slow cook it, cook it for a longer amount of time, definitely that works. So those are all examples of things, and the list can go on. So there are some ways to do it, but yeah, it does need to be definitely, we need to think about it, and it needs to be intentional. Some strategies I can think about would be, sometimes package size really makes a difference. So if I were to buy like a larger package or a container of yogurt is sometimes cheaper than the little individual one. So you have to check that out. A great strategy to help you there is unit pricing. So the price per 100 grams or 100 mils is on that shelf tag, and you can use that to compare prices very easily. Other strategies would be to use apps. There's so many out there now. Coupons as a way to save money and shop what's on sale, and meal plan regarding what's on sale. And then again, that freezing leftovers to reduce food waste, using and employing that strategy of cook once, eat twice, so that you can enjoy your leftovers in a different way, would all be examples of strategies as well.
Okay. How do you balance all the requirements to get enough calcium through diet, plus protein, plus watch your fat content, and still lose a few pounds?
Yeah. Okay, this is a great question. And I try to do this throughout the presentation, where I know we're talking about nutrients and single nutrients, and I know that can get confusing. So I've always tried to relate it back to food. So, what I can tell you is you need to focus and find an eating pattern. And that was the rationale from giving you so many at the beginning. Find an eating pattern that resonates with you, that fits your lifestyle. That's the place to start. What is that nutrient dense eating pattern that works for me, right? We definitely need to be intentional with some nutrients, like you saw when we go through the nutrient calculator. If we're not intentional on some nutrients, they can be missed. But it is important. But it's important to find a pattern of eating that resonates with you, where you're hitting all of those targets. You're getting protein and fiber at meals to keep you full longer. You're feeling satiated. You're feeling good. You're feeling confident in those food choices. And I would always say, if you're struggling, reach out to a registered dietitian. It's what we do for a living. We can help really translate that science into food, into really easy, workable things that are going to work for you, so that you're confident no matter where you go that you're going to make good, nutrient dense choices most of the time that are going to fit with your lifestyle goals. That's the key.
Okay. Well, at this point, I'm cognizant of the time. I just want to say thank you to Laurie for such an informative presentation on nutrient-rich foods. I also want to also thank our partner, Think Beef. It's been a great presentation and lots for people to take away. For more information on osteoporosis, please visit our website at osteoporosis.ca. You'll find many tools there, including our nutrient calculator that Laurie was talking about, past podcasts, quizzes, and a repository of our past webinars. This webinar will be available, I think, within 24 hours. So if there's something you missed and you want to go back, you can find it. We do have an upcoming webinar on March the 12th called Everything Seasoned Greek Yogurt Bagels. So hopefully many of you will attend that. And at this point, I just want to say a final thank you to all of you today for joining us, and hope you will join us again soon and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.